Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with the Oil Knight, Sean Patrick Ryan. Welcome to the Cult of Hockey podcast again.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I've really been liking the work you've been doing recently, where you've been watching the Bakersfield Condors games and giving us updates on what's happening down there. I've watched probably 10 games so far this year. How many have you watched, would you say?
I've watched the last 10, and then I went back and watched a few in between at the beginning of the season, too.
Yeah. I find, I heard, I once interviewed Kevin Prendergast, who was the head scout of the Oilers for a while and then worked for the Canadian national junior team. He was talking to get an initial assessment on a player. He'd like to see about 3 to 5 games. I actually find that not enough. I find that can be kind of misleading, seeing a player just that small amount of time. I need to see a player, like I find 10 games that's starting to get where you start over time, where you start to get a real sense of the ups and downs of the player, because they can be very inconsistent at the NHL level and obviously at the major junior level. So what do you like in terms of a time frame for assessing a player?
Well, I think 10 games is good, but I think it's important to, one of the things I track, and I'm sure we'll get into this, is progression, right? So I like to tend to catch a player early in the season, and a lot of times he's raw, and especially in the AHL, you get an idea as far as time of ice goes and utilization, how they're being used. And then you kind of catch them somewhere in between in the middle of the season and see if their roles have changed on the team and see if they've gained confidence. And then by the end of the year in playoffs and that, you'd like to see natural progression where they've kind of taken over a little bit or, turned weaknesses into strengths, hopefully, right? So I think it's all about timing too.
So for people who don't know you, your specialty is kind of looking at major junior players, especially in the OHL, and as kind of as an amateur hockey scout and just a passionate fan, and you write blog posts on them and have been doing this for a number of years now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
So what are you looking for when you're looking at these young players? I mean, you already identified a few things. What kind of skills are you looking for? What kinds of things are you looking for in terms of a pro prospect?
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody's different, but, I've kind of found over the years that there are certain trends or weaknesses in a lot of busts that have happened over the years, right? So I've kind of identified a few things that I've noticed. As far as strengths go, I think the number one, well, obviously a prospect has to have skill. If he doesn't have skill, then, we're not even having this discussion. But on top of that, you want to see the speed. It's a fast NHL game. If you see a junior player, for example, that doesn't really have speed you think will translate well to the NHL, then that's certainly a concern. And that kind of comes up in one of the red flags. But I look for speed, I look for skill, and I look for smarts. I love smart hockey players. The hockey IQ in both zones, not just an offensive player, but you want to see that guy who makes smart plays in the defensive zone as well. And then the other thing, and this is probably the number one thing, why so many prospects bust and why some guys just beat the odds is the compete level / some people call it a work ethic. Even if a guy's 5'9", 170 pounds, but he gives you 100% every single shift, and every time you watch him, you can't help but be impressed. That's something you definitely have to factor in. That's why I never count out anybody, no matter how big they are or how little they are. If they've got that compete level, then they've got a chance, right? So those are kind of the main things I look for. And then, of course, the 200-foot game and things like that, those are all bonuses. But if you got the speed, you've got the smarts, and you compete hard, then you're definitely going to be on my radar. And then as far as the red flags go, I think if you kind of look over, just the history, and I kind of consider myself a bit of a draft historian. If you look at the reasons why so many players did bust in the past, a few things do stand out. And then obviously I talk about how important compete level is. If there's a player or prospect that takes a lot of shifts off, you notice in junior, or even take games off, he's not hustling back in the defensive zone, he's lazy, whatever. That's a huge red flag. If you can't get motivated in junior as you're trying to become a pro, what are the odds once you get millions of dollars, you're going to, now all of a sudden you're going to work hard, you know what I mean? So that's a big thing for me. And then speed, like I talked about, obviously that's an issue. And high risk plays and turnovers, I think that's also another one that gets overlooked a lot. For example, a guy like Trevor Zegras, we saw at the World Junior.
I was just going to bring him up. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. Cause he was just rated #1 overall by Craig Button, But
Yeah.
you're not quite so bullish on that player. So why?
Well, first of all, I've been doing this a long time, unofficially living in London. I've been a Knights fan for 20 something years. I think one of the best junior players I've ever seen in my life was Robbie Schremp. And I learned a lot about Robbie Schremp at the time because I loved him as a player. I'm
Yeah,
like, he was a wizard. He was doing like helicopter lacrosse style goals in practice and all that. I'm like, there's no way this guy is not going to make the NHL. He's phenomenal.
yeah.
He had all the skill in the world, but he was kind of lazy and he was just a little too flashy and high risk, right? And I think that's kind of the same thing I see in Zegras a bit. All
You
these
didn't see that
behind,
at the time, though. You didn't. You were sold on Shrimp.
I was 100% sold on Shrimp.
It's funny how
100%.
we learn from our mistakes, like in terms of, and this is why, like I say, I no longer like to look at a player for 3 to 5 games and then make an opinion on that player.
Yeah.
I've done that. I mean, I fell in love with Jamie Alexiak in the AHL. I saw him in one playoff series against the Oilers farm team. I was thinking he was, I think, 19 or 20, and he scored 35 points in the AHL. This huge guy making all kinds of plays. I just thought, man, this guy is going to be a number one top pairing defenseman in the NHL. But I'd only seen him that one series, and it just was the first inkling, like maybe that's not the best plan in
Well,
terms of rating a player.
and I think the Oilers made that mistake with Griffin Reinhart too, right? He had such a
Well,
great.
it's a little different because he
Uh,
was around the organization for years. Like the guys like Lowe and McTavish and Tambellini would have seen him for years, and they
yeah.
just fell like they fell in love with the local guy, which I think is a whole different issue actually. So
Well, yeah, with Edmonton, maybe. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Well, we saw how many Oil Kings did the Oilers draft where they felt like Mitch Moroz and lots of high picks on local players. So, and we're going to talk about one of them, Tyler Benson, tonight. Any others that just come to mind in big terms of big mistakes for you, like where you had a learning lesson?
um, well, just with the Shrimp and Perry, I used to work right beside um, the gym there,
Yeah,
and those two used to come in and work out all the time.
yeah,
And I remember one, and I won't say who. One of them used to really work out hard, and the other would hit the treadmill a lot and just try and pick up chicks. And I never really thought of it at the time. I'm like, it doesn't really make a difference. I thought Shrimp was going to be the man, and I wasn't sold on Corey Perry at all. But when I talk about work ethic, it's on the ice and off the ice. And if a guy doesn't have it, and as an amateur scout, I'm not really privy to a lot of this
yeah.
information, right? But if a guy's got the work ethic on and off the ice, great. But if he doesn't, that's a huge red flag. And that's just something you read reports, and if you see that, you have to be cognizant of that. That's kind of the main gist of it.
Let's start going through the Oilers prospects then, and we won't start with who I think is actually the best. We'll save Evan Bouchard to last
Okay.
because I just want to hear your take on him because Bruce and I have weighed in on him in recent weeks. So let's start with Tyler Benson, one of these Edmonton guys that part of the reason I think Edmonton drafted Tyler Benson was he was a local Edmonton guy, and the top scout Bob Green really fell in love with his hockey player. What do you think of him in terms? What's your take on him? Let's start with what NHL translatable skills do you see in his game right now? What's the plus side with this player?
So he definitely has the great passing ability. That's kind of the first thing that jumps out. He makes some incredible passes. He's got the vision, and he seems like he's got good hockey sense. Like he reads the ice well. He doesn't seem to turn the puck over a lot, which is another thing I like. But that's kind of his bread and butter. He's like that pass first playmaking winger. He almost plays like a center, but
Do you see a lot of winners like that in the NHL?
you don't. And somebody asked me there the other day,
Yeah,
who remind you of? And I really had to kind of pause and think, how many wingers are pass first in the NHL? And there's not a lot, right? Gus Nyquist is one guy that does kind of come to mind. But other than that, I mean, he's got some good hands in close as well, Benson.
yeah,
And for the most part, he competes hard. Like every game, he's
yeah.
at least trying, right? So those are kind of the strengths, I think, as far as translatable skills.
Okay, what about a weakness? What are you noticing? What concerns you about him as a prospect?
Yeah, well, I think the foot speed is probably the main thing, and it's the overall lack of quickness and explosion. Watching those 10 games, I noticed there was a lot of times he struggled to gain entry into the zone, and when he did, he got rubbed out on the boards kind of right away. Defenders can kind of close the gap on him quickly because he doesn't have that separation speed or that quickness to kind of get away. So that's one thing I worry about a little bit. He can kind of be checked and rubbed out of the play too much. And then as far as his shot goes, I mean, he plays on the power play, and maybe we'll talk about this too at some point when we get to Maximov. But he plays on the power play of the left circle, and again, he's not a shooter at all. He's more of a passer, and when he does get an opportunity to shoot or a one timer, I think he kind of lacks a little bit in that area. He's not really a scoring threat. Again, he's always kind of looking to make that pass, right? So
He's kind of a poor man's Nuge. Like he's a passing winger, which is what Nugent Hopkins is right now. Uh, and but without that excellent skating speed. And I have to admit, when you brought up that him coming in over the blue line and getting rubbed out on the boards, I had a sinking feeling. I've seen that. I've seen that.
Yeah, well,
And I'm hoping for this player, right? Like I want him to succeed. But the difference between him and Yamamoto is Yamamoto had that speed, that extra gear, where and elusiveness in the offensive end, where it was just he could just make space for himself with his feet, quick feet. Benson struggles through that. Fortunately, like he does. It's interesting because he does have that really unique ability to make a great pass and to make a solid play on the boards. And I really like his toughness. I think these are all pluses. It's interesting in Edmonton because you have a group of centers who dominate the puck so much in Draisaitl and McDavid and Nugent Hopkins. He might have an easier time making the Oilers. He might actually find a place on the Oilers where if they needed kind of a traditional winger who could drive the puck down the ice, get it deep, make a play on his own with his speed, that might not work, but he might find a spot, possibly setting up these other guys and working well with them in combination. So I agree, though. There are, I can see why they called up Yamamoto first. I can see why they were thinking that. And I'll see. I mean, I was not bullish on Ethan Bear until last spring. I mean, I'd watched him a long time, and I didn't think he had the skating ability. But he suddenly had the skating ability. It looked to me, and it might have just been through fitness, that he gained that extra gear. But I think he really did gain that extra gear in 1 year. So maybe if Benson has that same kind of commitment, he can have that same kind of, because it's not like he has to get faster, but it's just a bit faster, a bit more explosive maybe he can do it.
Well, and the thing is with him is, I mean, I'm not certainly writing him off. Like I kind of consider him a bit of a wild card because he does parts and he is kind of shifty enough and elusive enough. If he can just give a little bit of time, he can kind of make that play. So it's possible. But another thing we got to keep in mind, like 50% of his offense comes on the power play. So when he gets to the NHL, he's not going to be on the number one power play. They're already set. So what is he going to produce 5-on-5, right? And if he doesn't have the speed and quickness, it's going to be really tough. So I know a lot of fans are excited with the results from Yamamoto, and like you said, they're two totally different players. So I would kind of temper the expectations. I think he deserves a shot in the NHL, but I wouldn't get too excited and expect too much right away.
Yeah, Bruce and I were comparing him to kind of Sam Gagner kind of player. And I think that's a fair comparison. And when Sam Gagner was in the AHL 4 games earlier this year, he kind of looked like Benson a lot. Benson's a little bit tougher though, so we'll see. Maybe there's a chance. But Gagner may have a bit better offensive game in terms of being a bit more elusive in the offensive end. Let's move on to Kirill Maksimov, who's been a longtime favorite of yours.
Yes.
So you checked in. I'm sure one of the reasons you checked in was you're looking at Maximov's stats line. It's not great in the AHL this year so far, and you're wondering what's going on with this guy. So what would you say in terms of his? Let's start with the plus side again. What translatable NHL skills are you seeing in him now, if any? What do you see?
Well, he definitely has an NHL shot. I think we all know that.
I haven't seen it very much in the AHL.
I'm going to get to that. His shot is NHL to release one timer. It's just unbelievable, right? And he's got, and he's aggressive too. He's physical. He's aggressive on the forecheck. He's guilty of taking too many bad penalties, sometimes retaliatory penalties because he is physical. But he's a big guy, and I like his compete level. He's always at least skating hard. He's coming back defensively. You definitely notice him out there.
Yes.
Maybe not shooting, but he's always kind of around the puck. He's a puck hound, right? So that and he can play on the power play, which we haven't seen much yet, but he can also penalty kill as well. So he kind of plays a variety of different roles. So he's versatile, which helps as well. And the other strength I think is, and people kind of knocked on this before, and I've been following him his whole career, is I think his skating has actually improved even more before his injury in Niagara. He looks like a stronger skater than he did to finish up the season in the OHL.
He's worked his way up to the second line with Colby Cave and Luke Esposito. He is a solid two-way player. He just hasn't yet taken that step to become a scorer like he was in junior hockey. So, and we're not seeing that shot yet. And part of it, like Woodcroft's power play. I like Jay Woodcroft as a coach. I've never really liked his power play because he never plays the shooters on their off wings. Right. And I never understand that. Why coaches don't do that. Honestly, it's always a mystery to me, and I've never had anyone explain it to me. Like, why is Benson not on his off wing? Why isn't Maksimov regularly deployed on his off wing? I don't get it, but that's the Woodcroft power play. I mean, that's what he likes doing. And it's, at Edmonton, we see Nuge, who's not on his off wing, and he's doing fine. So if you have a strong enough player, it can work. But Maksimov needs to be on his off wing, firing pucks at the net. And I think Benson would improve as a shooter too. And as a passer, you're just much more dangerous. And Max, he was on the power play the last game. He was finally getting some ice time on the power play, I noticed. So
yeah, well, in Edmonton, they don't really have any big right-handed shot players.
Yeah.
Whereas Maksimov has the best shot amongst the forwards anyways. He has the best shot in the team, but like you said, he hasn't really got an opportunity to use it much. And that's kind of the big thing that I noticed is just his usage in general. With him, even in Niagara, he requires, he's not a driver of the play. He's kind of like what Draisaitl was when he was playing with McDavid. Give the puck to McDavid and then go get open. And then he would hammer it, right? Well, he doesn't really have that player right now. With all due respect to Colby Cave and Esposito, they don't really create a lot of offense. So I notice, he'll give it up to somebody and then he'll go to look to get open, but he never gets the puck back, right? And then on the power play 2 that you were saying where he was there, they had him in the bumper position and he was successful in Niagara in the bumper position. But a lot of teams are playing that passive box. They're kind of taking that away. So why wouldn't you move him to the left circle, left half wall, where he has an unbelievable one-timer and and let him shoot more, because he averaged 4 shots a game in his whole junior career. He's only averaging like 1.5 right now in Bakersfield. He needs to shoot the puck more, put him in more offensive positions, give him an opportunity more. But unfortunately, I feel like that's not going to happen, at least till Benson is maybe called up to the NHL.
Well, they could move Benson over. They could just, put Maksimov on the left half wall, Benson on the right. And at even strength play Maksimov with Marody, see how that goes when Marody seems to be hurt this year quite a bit. Downside with Maksimov, what do you think? The skating he's not super fast, obviously. So
no, but he's a strong enough. I would say he's a strong enough NHL.
What are you concerned about in terms of him making it or not?
I honestly feel like he's going to be a good NHLer. Player, because when we talked about the strengths and that, he works hard and just from people that I know, he has an unbelievable work ethic off the ice. He works as hard as anybody. He's a leader off the ice. There's a lot of things that he brings. He kind of checks all those boxes. He needs to make sure he stays disciplined, doesn't take the unnecessary penalties. I still noticed there was a few in Bakersfield. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Pouliot there. Taking some
Pouliot he was an okay player.
Yeah, but I don't mind the chippiness and the aggressiveness, right? So there's that. And I think just confidence, overall confidence. He needs to be a little bit more assertive and just shoot the puck more instead of trying to get, a little too fancy. He had opportunities the last few games. He's coming down the wing, and instead of just ripping it, he got a little too cute and tried to deke the goalie and, stop. So, but I believe in that player for sure.
Grip it and rip it. Ryan McLeod, plus side.
So obviously the plus side with Ryan McLeod is his speed. He's got NHL speed. He's just beautiful to watch. Even if you don't know what number he is, you just turn on a Condors game, you just watch. Oh, that's McLeod. You can just tell, right? And I'd love to see him and Maksimov together actually, because he could get those zone entries and then he could set up Maksimov. But eventually, I'm sure that's going to happen. But yeah, and with McLeod too is he's a fantastic passer. Much like Benson, he has great vision as well. He can make those plays. And he's a solid penalty killer and a solid two-way player. He's got a lot of things you look for as well in terms of NHL translatable skills. So I would
downside
pretty much it. Well, the downside's still the same as it was in junior. He doesn't shoot the puck enough, and he doesn't go to the dirty areas enough. Although I notice he is getting a little more physical along the boards, and I see him kind of hanging around around the crease a bit more recently. But he just needs to put on his big boy pants and just go harder to the net and, you know, just and shoot that puck more, because he does have a great release. He does. He can shoot the puck, but I mean, Maximov had 74 goals in his last 2 seasons in the OHL. Well, McLeod only had 61 his entire 5 years in the OHL. He's not shooting the puck enough, right? But he has that there. So you just want
It's
him to kind of,
yeah. It's
you know,
interesting when I watch the AHL players. I often see guys with pretty superlative skill, like really strong skill, and I just think if you just were a nasty bugger out there, if you just were an agitator and like an Antoine Roussel, I remember him in the AHL, just carving a career out of nothing, really, just by hustling all out,
yeah,
going for it, being super tough. And it's easy for me to say this. I don't have to do this. I'm not, I don't have to back it up on the ice. But I just
yeah,
think you could earn 10 to 20 million dollars, Ryan McLeod. You,
mm-hmm.
Kirill Maksimov, you can earn 20 million dollars. Like that's just within your grasp. But you've not so much with Maximov because I think we do see that grit. But with McLeod, I just think if you just once a game decided, okay, I'm going to put someone through the boards with a hit. That's what
yeah,
I'm going to do,
yeah,
and that's how I'm going to play the game. And every chance I have to do that, I'm going to do that. $20 million, you could have
yeah,
that. So
yeah.
I just wonder, is it just a maturity thing that they don't see that they don't get that the equation is in some ways that play on the defensive side of your player in your own zone, become a solid, like when you're on the ice, like think of two things. I'm going to be always on the right side of my check in the defensive zone, always, 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 and in the offensive zone, whenever I get a chance to hit someone, I'm going to hit them, and I could make $20 million if I just do those things. And I just wonder, like, why that connection isn't made with more young players like McLeod. Maybe it's just, I don't know. It
Yeah, it's
baffles me.
just what they're used to, right? He's such a phenomenal skater. He's used to skating around everybody and going all the way around the net. And that if he would just take it harder than that, crush the net, who cares, right? But Dave Manson's down there. Maybe he can kind of instill some fear in him,
So,
fearlessness.
have you seen much of Samarukov?
No, because he was out there for a bit. I saw him the last few games when he came back. He looked pretty
Yeah.
rough.
Okay. I have seen him, and he's looked markedly better from the beginning of the year when he was tentative, but he came on strong. So, you don't have any. We can just move on from him then if you haven't seen him enough recently to say
Yeah.
much.
Well, the only thing with him is, and I kind of talked about this before, I think with you in the preseason there, for him it's just kind of focus on defense first. And he was a bit of a rover, especially in his last year
Yeah.
with Guelph, right? Just don't worry so much about the offense and pinching all the time. Just kind of be a nasty, stay-at-home defenseman first. Take care of your own zone first. And it seems like that's what he's doing. I didn't
It
notice him
it
rushing,
is. Yeah.
and that's what you want. So, because he can be a nasty, nasty player when he wants to be.
I really liked his development, and I thought he was coming along strong, and then he's been out. So
Yeah.
let's go to the junior players before we get to Bouchard. Let's go to Philip Broberg. I didn't watch the World Junior Tournament. I mean, I get enough hockey, honestly, from playing, coaching, and watching the Oilers. I have hockey all the time, and so the World Juniors just like no, I'm just burnt out on it. But you did.
Yeah.
What did you think of Philip Broberg?
I think there was good and bad with Broberg. Um,
So let's
he
talk about what skills does he have that translate to the NHL.
well, he makes a good first pass. He's got good straight ahead speed. Um, I mean, he's got good size. He seems to he rubs the attackers out along the boards a lot. He wins a lot of board battles. I noticed. It's funny because he kind of reminds me a lot of Nurse, and I know other people have mentioned that before.
Yeah, yeah,
There's a lot of similarities between the two. Strengths,
there are.
really, right? But I see
Same
him as a good.
skinny neck when they're same skinny neck at that same age too. Like Nurse was kind of a string bean then too.
He was, yeah. So that's kind of what I see. I see the speed, I see the puck moving ability, and he's good at gap control and things like that in the defensive zone. Seems to be pretty strong there.
What do you not like?
Um, there's nothing I really don't like a lot. I just feel like he could get better in a lot of areas. Like he's still a little bit raw in a lot of areas. Um, he's not the most mobile, even though he has a great straight ahead speed. He's not the most agile player, especially in the defensive zone when guys are going east west on him. He kind of loses track of the player there, and he's got a big shot, but he's not the most accurate on that. and I think his hockey IQ is still somewhat questionable. He makes kind of questionable decisions for me at times, or I watch him like, why did he do that? That didn't make a lot of sense to me, or well, that was a dumb play. I still kind of and Nurse can be guilty of that sometimes as well, and
Even
that's why
even today, often Darnell Nurse, right? I
right. So
complain
that
he gets the puck at the blue line in the offensive end, Nurse, and there's no great. We don't see that great play like you see with Ethan Bear,
yeah,
right? Like that smart heady play where he makes a quick fake and finds a little space for himself and dishes the puck off to someone very sweetly, who's wide open. You don't see
right.
that from Nurse, and it sounds like we're not seeing that from Broberg. What's interesting about Broberg is how much his coach loves him in Sweden. His pro coach in Skellefteå was just raving about him as the most talented young Swedish defenseman, and he's been around Swedish hockey for 40 years. This guy,
Yeah,
national teams, Olympic teams, the elite league, and he said like he was comparing him to, I can't remember, was it Hedman? It was like the very highest level. I mean, he compared him to Freddie Olofsson. I think that's the guy's name from an '80s player who was pretty damn good, but he was just raving about him. So that was really encouraging to me that his pro coach loves him that much.
mm-hmm.
So we'll see. Who would you have taken in that slot? I mean, I can't venture a guess, but who would you have taken if you had that pick based on what you had seen? And I know you were like, you didn't have probably expert knowledge of Broberg at that time. I'm guessing you hadn't
Well,
seen him enough
yeah.
to go ahead. But
Oh, sorry.
who would?
Well, yeah, I saw Broberg enough. I felt
Oh, you
pretty
did.
good.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't as high on Broberg. I had him in the 20s. I'm actually going to release this week my mock drafts from the last 4 years. Every player I would have took and who Edmonton took, so something to keep an eye out for. I was big on Philip Tomasino, who
I
played
remember that. Yeah.
played for Niagara. Now I was kind of saying, okay, well, we should trade down for him. That was kind of the main thing because he was still
Okay.
my guy. But if just based on who was on the board, Cole Caulfield would have been the guy I would have took based on everything
Okay.
because Edmonton needed a shooter, right? And I felt like he was the best guy that could put the puck in the net.
Fair enough. I have no comment because I haven't seen him play enough at all, honestly. So, all right, let's go to Lavoie, who I saw in the Oilers training camp. What do you think of his game?
There's a lot to like with him as well. There's some good and bad. Um, he's got good size and he can be physical. He's really hard on his stick. That's one thing that I noticed. And he wins a lot of puck battles along the boards and that. He has a phenomenal shot, just as good as Maximov. It's probably a better wrist shot than Maksimov. He can really rip that puck, and that's something obviously Edmonton needs. His top end speed is pretty good. He's defensively responsible for the most part. There's a lot to like, but the main thing is he's going to hang his hat on is that shot and release. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to get that off when he gets to the NHL, but yeah. So
I just want to see, is he one of those guys that's going to be next year a junior, or next year is he a?
Yeah, he'll be in the AHL next year.
He's like a September or October birthday, right? Like late September, early October, is he not? Or yeah, so he'll be in the AHL next year. Someone like Broberg will still be in the World Junior Tournament next year.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, he was the youngest player, I believe, on this. Well, not the youngest player. He was the youngest defenseman on Sweden, on that Swedish team. So, I mean, that's one of the things when I rate Broberg, he's like a full 2 years younger almost than Evan Bouchard. He's not just a year younger. He
looks about 10 years younger.
Yeah, Evan Bouchard looks like, well, that's all right. Let's talk about Evan Bouchard. What you saw him a lot. Obviously, you saw him a ton, and I remember you liked Noah Dobson a little bit better, as I recall, in their draft years. And we'll see in the end who becomes a better pro player. What do you think now of Bouchard based on your recent viewings? What are you liking in his game and not liking in his game?
Yeah, well, just to clarify, I always liked Bouchard.
Yes, you did.
I thought he was a great.
It was close. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he was a great pick or great fit for the Oilers because they needed that offensive defenseman quarterback style. And I kind of compared him to John Carlson, who also played in the NHL or also played for the Knights long term, right? And then I kind of projected Noah Dobson to be more like Pietrangelo. So they're two kind of different players, but yeah, I would have took Dobson over him.
Pretty nice comps for both of them.
Yeah, so I mean, as far as Bush goes, I mean, he's progressing great. I don't understand Button and some of these people that put out these lists and don't have him on there. It just makes absolutely no sense to me. As far as I'm concerned, he still projects as a number one or a top pair defenseman. I remember, was it 2 years ago, maybe I wrote for the Edmonton Journal there, I put a thing out, patience is required for Evan Bouchard.
Yes.
A lot of people wanted to rush him, and I said, just wait defensively. He's got a lot of warts on defense, right? And I think people understand that now.
Yes.
But he's got a great ceiling. And the thing is, he is whether we admit it or not, he is a bit of a finesse defender, right?
Yes.
He's never going to be that, real physical, diving down, blocking shots, real aggressive defender. He's just going to beat you with skill, right? He's going to move the puck real, he's going to be real savvy and show a lot of poise and just kind of move that puck real quick and, get it out of his zone. But I really like what he's worked on. I really like his gap control as well. He sticks to guys now. He doesn't give them any room when they come into that zone. He's on them, and then when they go around the boards, he doesn't give them 5 or 6 feet to let him get away. He stays on them. So I know that was a big point of emphasis in the AHL, right?
That's the big difference I'm seeing in his game. Like, I'm seeing two things. Offensive confidence is increasing from the start of the year.
Yeah.
And which is not surprising at all. That's expected. But the thing that I'm liking is he's tougher on the zone entries. His gap's better. And he's, like you say, he's just sticking with guys better. He's positionally better. Like, he's just making sure he just keeps his body. And that's all Justin Schultz ever had to do. Like, I see them as kind of similar players in some ways. Mm-hmm. That's all you have to do is just be positionally sound. Like, you don't, like Chris Russell doesn't blast people. He's super intense. He's just with you. He's on you. He's wherever you go. He's just making sure that he's there. That's what Evan Bouchard, he's not going to be. He doesn't have Chris Russell's intensity, but that's what he has to do. He just has to be there, and he's got to be in front of them, and he's starting to do that more. And that's really encouraging, because the last thing I want to see, and I still see it now and then, is tune into these games and see him get walked. And it happens now. It still happens now and then.
Yeah.
And like, he's not playing with the greatest AHL player in the world in Keegan Lowe. And this is a hard, like, I know Keegan, like, he's Kevin Lowe's son, and like Kevin Lowe's a great guy, and Keegan Lowe was a good player. But, if he was playing with Ryan Stanton, like, he would have that much more, he wouldn't have to make up for somebody else's mistakes, put it that way.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
Boy, he is really rising to the occasion. And I'm more excited now about Evan Bouchard as a prospect, easily more excited than I've ever been watching him the last little while in Bakersfield. What about you? Do you have the same feeling, or is it this more expected in terms of his development from your perspective?
Yeah, this is kind of what I expected. I think I mentioned previously, I expected him to at least spend half the season in the AHL, perhaps the whole year, and then be up by next year. I don't see how they can keep him down, just because he moves the puck so well. He can run a power play. And you're just talking about offensive players. If you just think about the NHL, like, look at Erik Karlsson. He's never been a great defender. He still gets walked, right?
They all do.
John Carlson, who I compare him to, John Carlson was the same way in London, and he was the same way in Washington for years. He would still get beat defensively, but there's so much offensive upside, and he has the poise, and he has great leadership too. He's taken on a leadership role and in Bakersfield, and he can run a power play. There's so many good things that he offers that, as long as he's good enough, like we said, to just kind of stick to his man and get that puck out of his zone quickly, he doesn't have to be, a superb defender. He just has to be good enough, because the offense will more than make up for it.
If they have Bouchard in the NHL next year, and I personally think they should be kind of planning to make room for him on the Oilers for next year. They got to, just like they had to move Sekera out to make room for either Caleb Jones or Ethan Bear. Mm-hmm. Your team has to change. So, but I mean, I don't know what the move they're going to make is, but if you have a right side defense on the Edmonton Oilers, and it's, you have Adam Larson, Ethan Bear, and Evan Bouchard, you've got a pretty good right side defense. And the thought of Bouchard playing with McDavid on this even strength with McDavid, power play with McDavid and Draisaitl is just thrilling. Like, we could start to see some real magic, because he's a magical offensive player. And I see it in just little things. His bank passes off the boards. Like, even when he makes a bank pass off the boards, it's right on the other guy's hockey stick.
Yeah.
So it's astonishing. His hand-eye coordination, his dexterity with the puck, that ability to make that kind of play. That is, I think he's a better passer than Justin Schultz. And Justin Schultz was a pretty good passer of the puck.
Yeah.
But Bouchard shoots it harder and he passes a little bit more accurately. He's a little bit, I mean, Schultz was super calm with the puck. So I think they're similar in that way. And Bouchard's going to drive people crazy in the same way that Justin Schultz did with that kind of almost unnatural calmness on the ice, which some people will interpret as a lack of intensity. But that's how they play the game. They slow it down, they take it slow, and but they're smart.
Well, I'm gonna ask you about his speed, your thoughts on his speed in a second. But the one thing I want to point out with Bouchard that I love, and I think it's very underrated, is especially on the power play, he has that I've been referring to as a lob shot, where he'll take his stick and he'll throw it to the net, but then his stick ends up like up here how he does it, and it's such a good release, and it's such a tippable puck. It's hard and it's on the net. You can either tip it, or if the goalie screened, it'll go top corner, right? It's almost like a Brett Burns thing where he changes angles and he kind of just gets.
Yeah, it is like that. That's the player who does that best at the NHL level.
Yeah. So
and he approaches that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So I'm curious your thoughts on. There's a lot of people that criticize Bouchard and say he's not quick enough, his speed. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Bruce was saying he doesn't get beaten puck puck races too often, does he? Like when he's going back for the puck, and when he goes back, he's so dexterous that he's going back for a puck and he easily picks it up off the boards because he's got that he's highly coordinated. So he's got enough speed to get there first, and then he just is so smooth when he gets the puck that he's able to make the play. So he's one of those deceiving players because he is quite a large guy and he doesn't seem to have a lot of fast twitch muscles. He's got the slow twitch going on, but he seems to, he gets there and he beats players to the puck. My concern was his backwards speed, his backwards agility, like you pointed out with Broberg, side to side. Well, can he stay with players defensively? And I think he can. I'm starting to see that he can do that at the pro level, at the AHL level. And, I'm looking forward to seeing him in Edmonton next season. I think it's going to happen, and I think it's like I'm getting really excited about it. So we'll see if it pans out or not. Maybe we're both dead. Maybe I'm dead wrong here, and he's not going to make it.
I think you'll be right. My son's excited because I have a blank Oilers jersey signed by Bouchard. So yes, we should probably put the number 2 on it now and get Bouchard on there and make it official. Yeah, he's excited.
Alrighty, well, I think we're done our list. I just want to thank you for coming on tonight, and hopefully we'll get you on again soon.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it a lot, and hopefully we can fill the gap a little bit here for Oilers fans without hockey for a bit.
Well, we have Turtlegate to talk about, so it's an endless source of an entertainment. And you watched Tkachuk a lot, man. I liked him in junior hockey. I really liked that hockey player when he played in London. He was such a strong, passing, attacking hockey player, physical, tough, and nasty. He's the same thing in the NHL, and I wish the Oilers had him, but they don't. So,
yeah, I agree.
All right. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks, Dave.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.